Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I'm taking a look at the new and improved Class 35 or High Mech from Heljan. Last year in 2022 I did a review of what was then the current Heljan Class 35 model. It was released under the EFE rail brand. Despite being very expensive, with an RRP of £159.95 and a retailer price that I paid of £135.99, I felt that the model was quite dated. The level of detail seemed to be very simple and the chassis was particularly dated, I think the most notable feature being the use of bulbs for the lighting instead of LEDs. Since I filmed that video, Heljan have finally released a new and updated version of their Class 35, and I have one of those right here. Now, I've been reading all sorts of sources which are talking about the upgrades on these locomotives, and yet the extent of the upgrades and improvements is still quite unclear to me. Most of these sources talk about a lighting upgrade, so it seems as though the new 35s now have LED lights in them, and most of them also talk about the change to the decoder socket. So the old version had an 8-pin socket, apparently these now have a 21-pin decoder socket, so you've got a bit better compatibility there. However, this model is significantly more expensive than the one I reviewed last year. The RRP for this one is £209.95 and I ended up paying £178.46 for this one, which represents an increase in price of around 30%. Now that says to me, if this is going to be considered good value, I'm going to be seeing more here than just an upgrade to the lighting and the DCC socket, because frankly the old version should have had that for how much I paid for it. So I'm not too sure what to expect. Hopefully this model will be completely modernised, hopefully it will meet or exceed all modern standards, and hopefully it really will be a £200 or thereabouts locomotive. Not had it out of the box yet, so I have no idea whether I'm going to get what I expect or not. Try not to think too much about previous Heljan experiences here, but let's get it out and let's actually find out. So this time we've got some fairly nondescript packaging, and I'm sure the last new Heljan loco I looked at, was it the Class 45? That had a lovely line drawing on the front of the box, which was a lot better. This one's plain, as you can see, not a big deal though, of course. Let me show you the end of the box then. So this is 3535, simple. This one is in the BR blue. The one I looked at last time was in the BR green, but I didn't have much of an issue with the livery. I thought the livery application, even on the old model, was pretty good. So I thought, well, we'll try something different this time. It shouldn't really matter too much for the comparison. It's D7058 and it has full yellow ends. Now below here you can see that we've got some features. You can see it features a 21-pin DCC socket, which is different from the old one, and the lighting seems to be significantly different as well. We've got interior lights, I don't believe the old version had that, and cab lights as well. Don't think there was any cab lights on the version I looked at last time. So sure enough, we do seem to have upgrades to both the DCC socket and the lighting package. But let's open up the box and see what the model itself looks like. Here we go. Alright, so we've got good quality packaging as usual from Heljan. So we've got some foam on the top here, and the loco is nestled in a blister pack with more foam around the outside. I've got some instructions here, so let's have a look. Maybe this will reveal a little bit more of what's been done to this model. So this is the BR Class 35 High Mech user manual. So there you go. First of all, you've got a class history of the BR Class 35 or High Mech. Pause and read that if you'd like to. Body removal, I seem to remember this involved clips last time, and looking at these instructions, the same seems to be true. I think the body was fairly well held in position though, so the clips aren't too bad. Lighting functions, this is all new. As you can see, we've got micro switches inside now, which apparently allows you to control the independent cab interior and tail light functions. for DC mode. So pretty cool. Seems like there's a significant difference there. Here we've got an exploded diagram. You can see the new circuit board on there. I assume that will all be new for this loco since it is so technologically different. And then you've got a few of the other bits, the chassis. I'll have to have a look at those and see if there are any differences. Additional detail parts. So apparently we've got 4 air pipes, 2 vacuum brake pipes, 2 dummy screw link couplings. That's a shame. Why are they dummies? They could be real these days. And 2 steam heat pipes. Okay. And then you've got some technical information, so centrally mounted 12-volt motor with flywheels, that's the same as before I think. Doesn't mention the number of poles, although I think these are 5-pole motors. Control system, yeah, it's 12-volt, this is all very standard stuff. So we do have illuminated head codes at the front and tail light at the rear, that's fair enough. Cab interior lights, again, that is a new feature. Some dimensions, that's quite interesting. So we've got the length, height, width, wheel diameter, really quite useful stuff. And then on the back you've got some housekeeping, which I think should be pretty much the same for most locos. This is compatible with radius 2 or broader curves. So yep, that's pretty standard, isn't it? Okay, so with that, let's have a look at the loco. There it is, nestled inside the packaging. Got to say, like the BR green one I looked at, the livery seems to be absolutely lovely on this. So let's pull it out and let's have a closer look. Oh, we've got some silicone packs here to keep the loco from getting damp. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Okay, well, hopefully the damp issue will be solved, which is a joke because I've never had a damp loco before, but still, I won't say no. Right, so we've got accessories on the base, all fitted to a sprue, so there's a lot to see here. All right. So without getting all of this out, I can see what the instructions mentioned. Everything does appear to be on a sprue, including the screw link couplings. So again, these really are just dummies. They're not the real working ones. Again, this model for me is too expensive for that sort of thing. Most locos at this sort of price point now have proper moving screw link couplings that you could even use if you wanted to. Since these ones are just molded plastic, you can't do that. Yeah, I think given that they've upgraded this loco, that feature could quite easily have been added. Anyway, let's have a look at the loco herself then. Let's open this up, have a look at the finish, see whether that looks like it's quality. Let's unwrap. Yeah, it does, to be fair. Yeah, it looks quality, doesn't it? The BR green one had a fairly satin sheen to it, and so does this. Yeah, I really like that finish, actually. Let's pull it out then, see what the weight is like. Yeah, this is a classic Heljan loco, and as such it is really quite heavy. So again, like the previous version I looked at, we've obviously got a very heavy die-cast chassis on here, which is good. Anyway, the loco looks fairly neat and tidy. At a glance, I can't see very many manufacturing defects in terms of visible glue or wonky detail, so that is a pretty good sign. As for the level of detail and any upgrades in that area, not entirely clear at the moment. I'll have to have a real close look at this and then I'll get back to you with any changes I've noticed, as well as a basic rundown of the details we've got. But there it is, the new and improved Heljan Class 35, cost me £178.46. I'm now going to give you a brief history of the Class 35 in real life, and then when we come back, I'll show you a close look at some of the details. The Class 35, or HiMech, got their nickname as a result of their hydraulic transmission units, which were manufactured by a company called McHydro. Putting the two words together produced the word HiMech. The Class 35 was introduced in 1961 when the first of 101 examples was built for the western region of British Railways. The design was intended to meet demand for a lightweight but moderately powerful fleet of diesels for light passenger work and freight duties. The HiMech liveries were quite interesting. The first ones had quite a complex BR Brunswick green livery with that classic green stripe along the bodies and the grey roof, and then later they had yellow walling panels added to each end. This was followed by a BR blue scheme, which some examples wore from 1965, and as you can see, that's very much what this model depicts. Withdrawal of the class began in 1971 as the design was deemed non-standard and therefore inefficient to maintain. By 1975, the final withdrawal had occurred, with only 4 examples now remaining under preservation. So here is the new and improved Heljan Class 35 up close and personal for you. And like the Class 35 that I looked at last year, the EFE rail version, This model looks absolutely fine. It seems to capture a Class 35 very nicely. But like I say, that has always been the case. What I'm really interested in today is the differences between this model and the older version of the Heljan Class 35 that I looked at last year. Now obviously at this point I have not opened up this locomotive, so I'm not aware yet of any changes that have been made to the internals of the locomotive, but I've compiled a list of the differences that are apparent from the outside of the model, and I'm gonna give you that list now. So the first difference is that this loco is 1 gram lighter. The previous version weighed 500 grams and this version weighs 499. That's the end of the list. I can't find any other differences. If there are any other differences that I have missed, please comment down below and let me know. But as far as I can tell, externally, this is the same dated Class 35 that I looked at last year. Now, to be fair to Heljan, I can't find any evidence of them saying that they have upgraded the level of detail in any way of this loco. But when you hear that a dated model has been improved, when you find yourself paying £40 more than the previous version, you just kind of expect that the loco would be brought up to modern standards, but it absolutely hasn't been. We've still got the plastic unsprung buffers, which are quite poor quality in their appearance. I really thought that would have been improved. You've still got the very basic unpainted cab detail. None of the details have been picked out here, and the floor level is still way higher than before. The moulded detail on the body is exactly the same as far as I can tell, so relatively soft moulding and just moulded grills and such, not separately fitted. And in fact, the grill up on top of the body still has that weird moulding effect where it looks like parts of the grill are sort of blocked by debris. I thought that was glue or stray paint or something on the previous model I looked at, but this one's the same as well, so I don't know if it's this way by design. Yep, the bogie detail is absolutely the same. Most of the detail here is just part of the moulding. We've still got the just moulded lamp brackets here. The fronts of these lamp brackets are not painted as they were on the BR Green version, so they don't stand out quite as much, but yep, still exactly the same. The handrails still exactly the same. Nothing wrong with those per se, but they haven't been changed. And the ends of the model appear to be much the same as well. We've got the separately fitted wipers, which were fine in the first place. More handrails, except the tail lights just seem to have been manufactured more poorly here because they look a little bit messy. And the same is true of these head code panels, really. Just badly manufactured. They're all sort of scratched up. Not good at all. Similarly, the horns are a different colour as per this livery, but they're not particularly well glued on. Well, in fact, they are a little bit too well glued on because the glue is massively visible from the outside of the model. So yeah, really disappointed. This model is incredibly expensive now. It has an RRP of £210, folks, and if you want to buy this from the retailers, we're talking the best part of £180. Now, to this I say, what is the point? What is the point in this locomotive? What is the point in Heljan creating models like this? Because we've got companies like Accurascale now who are offering a massive amount of features on their new locos, and almost all of them are larger and cheaper than this Class 35 from Heljan, which I find absolutely mind-blowing. The Class 37 is £169.99. Much larger loco, much more detailed, brand new tooling, not aging like this one. The Class 55 Deltic is still priced at £169.99. That's almost £10 cheaper than this. We saw what level of detail that had. The upcoming Class 66, again, £169.99. It is cheaper than this at the retailers. Even that Class 92, which is possibly the most detailed model I've ever looked at, was barely £10 more expensive than this from Accurascale. So I find myself asking, why are Heljan locos not moving on with the times? The same was true of the Class 45 that I looked at last time. Lovely model, it looked fine, but it was not matching other manufacturers in terms of its features, and yet it was still pretty darn expensive. This model is fine, like I say. I'm sure many people could purchase this model and be quite happy with its level of detail. But the fact of the matter is, this has far fewer features than a lot of other models that you can get. So my question is, why is this more expensive? Why are we being charged all of this for a loco without sprung buffers, without proper screw link couplings, without proper cab detail? Yes, this might have a more modern 21-pin decoder socket now. Yes, it might have LED lighting now, but these are not remarkable features. Every new diesel comes out with these features. These features are not enough to make an aging model worth the same as a brand new tooled model from Accurascale. I use Accurascale because they are one of the better manufacturers in our industry, but the same is true of many others, even Bachmann to an extent. So yeah, really disappointed. I'm just irritated by the fact that I've paid so much for this thing when it is visibly no different on the outside than the older, cheaper, and yet still significantly overpriced Class 35. Shocking, shocking stuff. Anyway, let's take a closer look at what this loco does have. Like I say, the finish and the decoration does seem to be absolutely fine. You've got a nice satin finish on here. The print work seems fine. You've got a fair bit on the side of the cab there. You've got various plates as well as the running number. The British Railways arrows, absolutely fine, no issues with that. And you've got a fair bit of printing along the bottom of the body. The decoration is not outstanding though. It's clear to see that the painting on the yellow end is not that neat and tidy. And this is not a complex livery. This is really the only area of complexity on the model, and it's not been done particularly well. So again, value for money seriously lacking here. There is no buffer beam detail fitted to these locos. That does make sense because a lot of the time that detail will foul up the couplings, but it does mean that the locos look quite bare without any of that stuff fitted. And the fact that all of those details are still on the sprue, not even been taken off the sprue and tidied up, is again very surprising for a loco of this price. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too long looking at the various details here because, like I say, nothing really has changed. So if you'd like to see a bit more detail on the detail, then check out the video that I did last year. I'll put a link up in the top corner now. For now though, I'm going to take a look inside this locomotive. We're going to see if the performance is any better. That ought to be interesting. And we'll find out whether the internals of the loco are bringing any additional value to the model. I certainly hope so. So there it is down onto the track, the new and improved, not sure why I keep saying that because it's not true, Heljan Class 35. Now the first performance test has already been filmed and I will show you how that went in just a second. After that I went and took a look at the mechanism and that's what I'm going to present to you now. So first of all, as I alluded to earlier on, this new Class 35 is slightly lighter than the old one, but only by 1 gram. So really, unless you're being pedantic, it's the same weight, that hasn't changed. The bogie design is unchanged as well. The disassembly works in exactly the same way. The easiest way is to take the side of the bogie off and then try your best to unclip the base without snapping the pieces. Not ideal, a screwed assembly would be better, but that's not really Heljan style, unfortunately. There are no bearings on the driving axles, and of course I prefer locos to have bearings because my testing shows that a chassis will run a lot more freely with the bearings fitted, but nothing like that here. We've got pickup wipers on each axle, so you have got all-wheel pickup here, but you've also got a lot of gears. This was the same on the EFE rail version, and it does make me wonder whether the sheer number of gears here is adding to the drag in any way. The body removal is pretty much unchanged as well. There are just clips which hold the body in position. They are quite rigid clips, so I don't think there's any real danger of the body dropping out. However, now though, because there are cab lights, we have these ungainly wires which connect the chassis to the body. No big deal, they are long enough so that you can get access to the decoder socket, but you do need to be careful of those. Manufacturers of quality models use some sort of spring-loaded contact to make that a little bit simpler for the customers, but I don't consider Heljan to be a manufacturer of quality models. The chassis is also very much unchanged. You've still got the heavy die-cast chassis, which brings a lot of the weight. The only real change here I can see is the circuit board, which does have that 21-pin DCC socket on there, so that opens up a few more possibilities in terms of which decoders are compatible with this loco. And you've also got this little switchboard, which allows you some customizability over the lighting on analog mode. Noticeably though, there is no pre-fitted speaker inside this loco, nor is there any space for one. Now if you're modernising a loco, you would have thought this would be something Heljan would want to include. I suspect that creating a space for a speaker in this loco would have involved modifying the tooling to some degree, and it seems fairly clear that that is not something that Heljan were willing to do with this. So here is the lighting arrangement. Instead of the old-fashioned bulb that we had behind the head codes, we now have an LED, but very strangely the LED is pointing downwards, not outwards. And these LEDs are very directional. So most of the light is coming out of the end of the LED, the top end, not the bottom that we have exposed here. Now that might be a deliberate decision to make the lighting a little bit more subtle, but these lights have to shine through a paper head code in order to be seen, and frankly there's just not enough light coming out of those LEDs to be noticeable at all, unless you switch all of the lights off and turn the loco up to full power. So ultimately this is no improvement over the old bulbs. And the red tail LEDs are similarly bodged as well, because there's this sort of foamy tape which covers up pretty much the entire LED. That's only the case on one end of my loco, the other end is not completely covered, so you get a bit better light output on that one as well. But yeah, the LED retrofit is very, very basic, and the design of the chassis hasn't really been changed in any way to accommodate this, so it's kind of just been bodged on to the existing design. So why the price has been put up so significantly for these very, very minor and half-baked improvements, I absolutely have no idea. The gauge of this loco is pretty under gauge. The back-to-backs come in at 14.0 to 14.1, which is up to 0.4 millimeters below the standard. It's a little bit further below the standard than you would normally see from a manufacturer. So the mechanism is still fairly disappointing. The upgrades really are just that 21-pin DCC decoder socket and the LED lighting. When I read that this loco had been upgraded and improved, I thought those two features were just examples of what had been improved. I wasn't necessarily aware that that was the entire list. I was certainly expecting more, given that this loco has cost me £40 more than the previous version of this model, which in itself I thought was very, very overpriced. Anyway, I'm going to try not to get too angry about this now, because it has dawned on me that I've just wasted an awful lot of money on yet another poor quality Heljan loco. But let's move back in time and let me show you what the performance was like. Right, moment of truth then. Remember, the old version of this model did perform very nicely at the high speeds. Very, very good performer once it was up and running. However, down at the low speeds, the loco was not a good crawler, and there was also a real lack of torque as well. So there is room for Heljan to have improved over their old design, and I'll be interested to see whether they actually have done. But first, let's find out whether the loco works, and let's also have a look at these lights. So, does it run? Let's turn it up and see. Yeah, so it started running very, very smoothly right from the off there. Does seem to be good and smooth. Have we got lights coming on? No. So, what's the deal with that then? Yeah, I'm really not seeing anything here. Let me just ramp it right up. So in forwards direction, I'm not seeing any lights. I am seeing cab lighting. There is a very, very dim cab light that is coming on. Again though, why you would want cab lights in here, I'm not entirely sure, because obviously there's no real cab detail to speak of. So really all the interior lights are doing is just illuminating the lack of cab detail. I think really if they're adding that feature, they ought to have added some cab detail to go with it. Other way, oh yeah, I am just about seeing a tail light there. So on analog at least, again, just like when the bulbs were fitted, these lights are just too dim to be visible. I'm not actually seeing any visual improvement at all here. Let's just dim the lights and let's see if those head codes are going to light up a bit better. Okay, yeah, so in the dark you can just about see it. It's not good really, not visible enough really to be seen. The tail lights are a little bit better, could probably do with being a touch brighter. So again, subtle lighting is okay, and if you prefer your lighting to be subtle to the point where you almost can't see it, then fair enough. But to me, these are really too dim to be of any use. And that was at full power. If I give this 50%, which is about a standard running speed, yeah, it's really too dim to be visible, isn't it? So lighting might be LED based now, but it's still really too dim to be seen, at least on analog. Right, so bear in mind the loco has not yet been run in, and I will be running this loco in fully before I cast any final judgment. But straight out of the box, what is the crawl like? Well, let's see. Has it got a bit more torque to it now? I'm going to slowly ease the controller up, and we'll see. I'm still easing, turning it up slowly. Not seeing any movement yet. Still going. Still going. I'm now at 30% power. I can hear a bit of buzzing, but I'm not seeing any movement. Let's go a bit further. Oh. Right. So again, when you think about what those other locos were like from a Curoscale and Bachmann these days, and then you've got this one leaping to life at 30% power, not too impressive. Let's try it in the other direction then. Let's get to about 30 and then ease from there. Alright, but I mean, it is starting smoothly, so let's see if I can just get it on that sweet spot, see if we can actually make it crawl. Because I don't know if it's going to. It might have actually done that then. Let's try again. I'm really, really turning gently now. Oh, is it moving there? A bit more? No, I don't think it is. I think that's my imagination. Still turning. Oh, yeah, it is actually. So that's, oh, it's actually starting below 30 there. Yeah, it is. Turning up a bit more. Seems to be cogging a lot, doesn't it? A bit more. Yeah, there we go, it's off. So I would say, and it doesn't really matter what I say at this point because I haven't run it in yet, so this is not final, but I would say it is probably a little better than the previous version. Not outstanding, and it's hard to get it to sustain that crawl, but it does seem to be more capable than the old one. So whether I've just got a better motor by chance in this particular example, or whether they've actually changed something, not too sure at this point. But yeah, it is hard to kind of get it to sustain, but I might be able to. Let's try one more. There we go. Kind of crawling there. Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. Can I do a smooth acceleration? Kind of did that without me touching it. Okay, fine. So what's the torque like then? Have we got a bit better torque now? Let's try. Put my fingers in front of the buffers. Let's turn it up to 50. No, it's not turning its wheels. So not a particularly noticeable improvement over the last version. It does have cab interior lights now, which is a noticeable improvement. The fact that it now has working tail lights is definitely an improvement, but the brightness of the lighting is really no better when the Loco had bulbs. Again, this Loco seems to be perfectly smooth at the higher speeds as the old version was, and while the crawl isn't much better than it used to be, at the moment I am seeing a slight improvement. But what I need to do is run this in and then we'll have another look at that in about an hour's time. So let's see how it gets on around the track. Here we go at 50. So as you can see at 50, it's quite a lively runner, isn't it? That is really, really speedy, to the point where realistically I wouldn't be running this Class 35 any faster than this in a realistic situation, which for me at least means that the top half of the controller's output is never going to get used. The entire range of speeds that I'm likely to use are constrained to that bottom 50% of the controller's output. And of course the Loco doesn't really start moving until I get to about 30 on the controller. So the Loco's entire spectrum of usable speeds is between 30 and 50 on the controller, which isn't fantastic. Now obviously, yeah, if you want your Loco to go a little bit faster, if you want it to do a high-speed express service with coaches, then yeah, the Loco could go a little bit faster. But I do think if this Loco had been geared to utilise more of the spectrum of speed available to it, then the Loco might have been easier to control and it might have crawled a little bit better. But that's only on analog. On DCC, on digital, your mileage may vary. But let's turn it up to full speed and see what this Loco can do, and see if it's the sort of thing that you really need a Class 35 to be able to do. Here it comes. Yeah, it's really bombing along, isn't it? So I would say you don't really need a Class 35 to be able to do this. So better gearing, I think, could have made the performance a little bit better. But like I say, at the medium speeds, the performance seems to be fine. Right, I'm going to slow this down, I'm going to finish running this Loco in, and then we'll come back and see what the performance is like. And also, sure enough, as this runs along at 50% speed, the lights are completely unnoticeable. I mean, you can't tell that there's any front lights on here at all. And looking at the Loco from behind, I can't make out the tail light either. So if you've paid £40 for these improvements and you're expecting to reap the benefits, at least on analog, you're probably going to be disappointed. On DCC, you'll effectively have full voltage going to those LEDs, so they will be a bit brighter, but as we saw, even on full power and the lights off, you can only just notice that they're there. Okay, that is running in complete, and you can really see how those flywheels carry this loco on after you cut the power. Look at this, cutting power now. It's carried itself out of shot, basically. So, yeah, those flywheels are absolutely massive. Like I said in the original review of this, well, the EFE rail version, I do wonder whether the sheer weight of those flywheels is what's causing the lack of torque at the slow speed, because that's an awful lot of weight directly coupled to the motor shaft, isn't it? But yeah, let's see. Is it any better at crawling now, and has the torque improved now that it's running? Let's have a look. Forwards first. The crawl was definitely better than the EFE rail version. Now that I've looked inside, I can't see any difference in the motor, but I suppose the internals of the CAN motor could have been improved. That's possible. But yeah, it almost crawls and then it sort of takes off. I think on DCC, the crawl might be a little bit better. I suspect you might be able to get a better crawl out of this on DCC. And people always say, oh, well, why don't you chip it then and review it on DCC? Well, I could do, but then it wouldn't be very comparative, because a lot of the locos I normally review, I just review them on analog, and most of those can crawl perfectly adequately on analog. So if this can crawl better on DCC, then that's great. But if it can't do it on analog, then that makes this a little bit worse off perhaps than some of the others. But I don't know, it seems to be having a good go at it. See if I can slow it down when it starts. Yeah, it really is kind of having a good go, and whenever it moves, it does seem to move quite smoothly, which is good. Let's try it in reverse. But I can't get it to sustain a crawl, that seems to be true. It does seem to start very nice and slowly, but then it kind of accelerates and moves a bit faster. But overall, I don't think I've got much of a complaint on the performance here. It does seem to be really nice and smooth, even if you can't maintain a low speed with it. That's really about as slow as I can get this to go. About there? Yeah, see it slowing down to a stop there. I have not turned it down there. Swatch direction. And back again. Hands off the controller. Here are my hands. Slowing down to a stop. Oh no. Is it? Yeah, it has done. So yeah, not brilliant, but not bad either. And like I say, at the higher speeds, absolutely fine. What's that torque like now? Let's see. Let's turn it up to half speed. No, still not enough torque to turn its wheels under a obstruction. So that's unfortunate. The pulling power is a little bit less than the EFE rail version, but not by much. This came in at 0.79 newtons, which should equate to approximately 44 coaches on straight and level track. I think, if I remember correctly, it was 47 for the EFE rail one. So, you know, they're within a stone's throw, aren't they? Anyway, to test this loco, I've set up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coaches. Quite old ones, these. These are Lima ones, so they've got a fair bit of drag to them. And I thought that would be an ideal test of this loco's torque. So let's go and couple. Let's see if this works. So I'm not matching the couplings like for like on this test, because I've got the slim tension lock here and the large D-type tension lock on the coaches, but I have tried this with a few other pieces of rolling stock, ones that do have the slim tension lock, and the coupling is at the right height, the couplings engage correctly, etc., so no problems with that. And as you can see, this one seemed to couple quite nicely as well. So let's get started. Right, let's try and do a gentle acceleration, if possible. Not a lot of controllability with this one down at the low speed. As you saw with the coupling, it was a little bit rough. And yeah, it's hard to get a smooth acceleration from standing still, but then any changes you make to the speed after that are a little bit easier. There we go, let's give it about 50 on there. It's a little bit quick, but hopefully that'll be quick enough so that it can actually get up Gordon's Hill. On the middle line, here's the loco that will have its ears burning because I've been talking about it all day. This is the EFE Class 35, which is exactly the same model. It just has an 8-pin decoder socket and bulbs instead of LEDs. Still shocked by that. Blimey. And then on the inside line, we have my newest Heljan loco, which frankly isn't much better. It is the Class 45 or the Peak. But with that, see which other Western region diesels you can spot, and let's catch up with the Class 35. Okay, here we go then, with a big rake of coaches, well, sort of big. No real slowing down on the second radius curves, that's pretty good. And at 50, it's not doing too bad up the incline either. So yeah, you've got a little bit of a torque issue. It's not exactly a powerhouse, but not too bad at all. Overall, the performance isn't bad. I would say the performance is definitely acceptable. It's not at the same level as you'd expect to see from a new Bachmann or a Curoscale loco, but then again, this loco isn't matching those guys in any area, so the fact that it doesn't underperformance too shouldn't be much of a surprise. Ultimately though, yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment. It's still a very old and outdated model, and the upgrades that Heljan have made to this are very, very superficial indeed. LED lighting as opposed to bulbs, and a 21-pin decoder socket as opposed to an old-fashioned 8-pin one are not features to shout about. In fact, those are the bare minimum. The fact that this loco, old and dated as it is, costs the same or more than a new tooled, massively detailed and feature-packed locomotive from other manufacturers is confusing to say the least. It is also too fast. I did test the speed of this model and it came out at over 130 miles per hour scale speed. Now, the top speed of the real 35 was 90 miles per hour. So there's no need for the model to be able to do those speeds. And if it was geared a little bit better, like other manufacturers gear their models a little bit better, maybe this would perform better at the lower speeds. So my honest advice would be, don't buy one of these things. Just save your money and wait until the likes of Bachmann or a Curoscale come along and do a Class 35 properly. Hopefully they will do, because hopefully they will have seen this 35 from Heljan. Hopefully they will have seen how old and outdated it is in its level of detail and features. And because Heljan have made this so expensive, it should be very easy for the likes of at least a Curoscale to come along and do a far better job for far less money. And they've done that quite a lot, what with the Hornby 31s and the 37s and whatever else they've been working on. There's so many examples that I don't think it would be too much of a push for them to do the same with this 35. So that would be my advice. Just wait until another manufacturer comes along and does a better job, because really this is far, far too expensive for what it is. Let's do some ratings then for the so-called new and improved Heljan Class 35. And in essence, this loco is just slightly worse than the EFE rail version that I looked at last year before the upgrades. And that's because this one is significantly more expensive, yet really no better. So the level of detail is the same as the EFE one, 2.5, no sprung buffers, basic cab detail, a minimum of separately fitted parts, relatively unrealistic grills. There is a lot more lighting on this locomotive, but it doesn't add anything to the model. The head code lights are too dim to be seen. The cab interior lights are a little bit brighter, but all they really do is illuminate the lack of cab detail. The only real addition in terms of lighting is the tail lights, which are actually now visible. Not really enough to add anything to the score though overall. The performance, I would say, is slightly better than the EFE Class 35. Now that could just be down to chance, that could just be down to the fact that the motor I got in this version happened to be slightly better, but I'm going to rate this model as it is. So it is a better crawler, does seem to be a little bit smoother, and the torque I would say seems to be a little bit better, does slow down a little bit with a large rake of coaches, but generally the performance is quite good, if not amazing, at the crawl. The pulling power comes in at 44 coaches on straight and level track, or 0.79 newtons. I would say for a loco of this size, it's pretty good. The mechanism though is just a 2-star. There is no improvement really to the mechanism as far as I can see. You've still got no bearings on the axles, it's still relatively unserviceable because it's all held together with fiddly clips. It does now have a 21-pin DCC socket, but of course I don't usually award extra points for a model having a modern DCC socket, because frankly that is the bare minimum. The additions in terms of lighting are quite low effort. The cab lights have now ungainly wires connecting them. The head code LEDs aren't pointing in the right direction, so the light output is largely wasted. And on my example, there were pieces of tape largely obscuring the tail LEDs as well. Yeah, not a great mechanism. Seems to have a good quality motor though, and there is some power there, which is good. even if that is undermined slightly by the sheer size, girth and weight of those flywheels. Not much of a big deal. The quality is okay though, it is at least put together quite nicely. It doesn't get 5-star because the paintwork isn't 100% and there are areas where there is some visible glue, but overall it has been put together reasonably nicely, and that nice heavy die-cast chassis does add to the quality as well. Value for money then, this is 30% more expensive to me than the last year's EFE rail version was, £42 more, and effectively there is no improvement in terms of detail and basically no improvement in terms of the chassis as well. Now I thought this was a 2-star when it was £40 cheaper, but now that it is so much more expensive and still no better, it is now a 1-star on value for money. When you look at what other manufacturers are offering for the same amount of money or less, it really shows how behind Heljan are becoming now. And if this is what their models look like when they take them back to the drawing board and supposedly improve them, then I have to say I can't imagine what Heljan's future can possibly hold. Even their new locomotives, such as the Peak, are not very impressive in my opinion. Overall then, that is 5.82 out of 10. Yeah, very disappointing and boring, frankly. I thought this would be an interesting video to compare the differences, when actually I could have told you the differences in about 30 seconds. Really annoying actually. Grade of E then, logbook, 14th place, below the Heljan Class 45. Yeah, not much more to say really. Well folks, that will just about do it for another review. I really feel that Heljan are taking advantage with this one. Effectively, what they've done here is taken a very old and outdated model, added some very, very minor upgrades to it, and then charged the same as you'd expect a new tooled, highly detailed, feature-packed loco to cost. It is blindingly obvious that this loco cannot have cost as much to produce as a Class 37 or a 55 or a 66 from Acura scale, and yet here it is more expensive with far fewer features. Just does not add up, and it is not a good look for Heljan at all. But let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Do you think Heljan are taking advantage with models and prices like this, or do you think they're just an inefficient manufacturer that can't produce the same results as the other manufacturers seem to manage for a similar sort of price? I'm really not too sure, but all I can say is I'm not at all impressed by this loco, and I wish I hadn't bought it. But that's just my opinion. If you disagree, that's absolutely fine. I know there are fans of Heljan locos and fans of the Heljan Class 35. If you think this is worth your money, then obviously you should buy one. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it gives you many years of enjoyment. Just don't pay too much attention if Acura Scale and Bachmann come out with the Class 35 of their own, because you might feel a little bit cheesed off when you see what they're capable of. But still, no judgment from me. Thank you so much for watching folks, I'll see you next time. Take care.